Namo Buddhaya. Good evening. Welcome to Buddha Dharma TV. I am Nidarsha Korituaku from Toronto, Canada. We begin our program, as is tradition, with a sacred blessing service conducted by esteemed Buddhist monks. This session is led by Venerable Ajahn Achalo from Australia. To cultivate the desired tranquility, we invite you to listen to the chanting with mindful attention and peaceful heart.
Antang sate hidukena nyayang anakalakaram atawada kasanyanam sammadewa vimochanam samputotam pakasesi deta sacchana yoginam uttarim pativedaya Pavitum jnanamuttamam yante sandita dhammanam jnanenupaparikatam sappasave kichitani vimmuchinsu asesato tata jnananusarena sasanam kattumichatam sadunam Siddhatam Tam Sutam Tam Vanamase Hewang Me Sutam Hekam Samayam Bhagava Varanasiyam Viharati Isipatane Megatae Tatrako Bhagava Panchavakiye
Now, let us turn our attention to Venerable Ajahn Achalo, who delivered an insightful sermon on Bright and Glad Mind last weekend. His words sure to deepen our understanding and inspire us to reflect on our actions. Please join me in welcoming Ajahn Achalo of Australia as he presents another sermon on a different topic, the Nibbana Sutra.
I'd like to discuss two sutras today. The first one, quite succinct but very pithy, is the Nibbana Sutta. If we think back to the Bodhisattva as the legend relays, the prince had been protected in the palace. The king had been warned in a way. The sage, Asita, I think his name was, had looked at the marks on the prince's body as a baby and had proclaimed that he was going to be a great renunciant. And so the king decided to try to keep things that might give rise to weariness out of view of the prince, hoping that he would become a wheel-turning monarch, a great king, rather than a great spiritual leader. But as the legend goes, as a young man, felt that something isn't quite right. Life in the palace isn't completely satisfying. And, keeping in mind that apparently the prince was good at everything, which would make sense. He spent millions of lives cultivating skills. He was good at sports, good at gymnastics, good at all of his studies, beautiful wife, lovely palace, pleasure gardens. And yet, that nagging feeling, something's not quite right. So he left the palace with his chariot driver, and as we are told, he saw on one outing, he saw a sick person. What's that? That's a sick person. And the driver explained, we're all subject to this. And another outing, saw an old person. What's that? Because the king was colouring his hair and colouring his eyebrows, and we don't know anything about that, do we? And then the driver explained, we're all subject to this. We saw a stooped over man with a crooked back, and another outing, a corpse. Saw a corpse in a charnel ground. What's that? That's a dead body. Am I subject to that too? Yep. Another outing, saw a summoner, a religious spiritual seeker. What's that? Well, that's a spiritual seeker looking for illumination, looking for higher truth, realization. The Bodhisattva had a very deep intuition that most people wouldn't be able to articulate it. A lot of people have a feeling of something isn't quite right. But with the Bodhisattva, with all of his practice, all of his study, all of his preparations, it's deeper. He had the intuition that this realm which is bound up with death, because there is birth, aging, and death, he had the intuition there must be a deathless. And most of us wouldn't have that intuition. We might wonder what the real meaning of life is. We might wonder how we can live in a way that's more fulfilling. But his intuition and his determination is much more profound. It's like, because there are conditions, conditioned reality, there must be an unconditioned. And he set out with determination to seek it. As the legend goes, the life story, in his wanderings through Rajgaha, the seat of the king of Rajgir, the king saw the newly renunciant prince walking through the city, and he instantly recognized the marks and signs of a warrior noble. And I'm sure the prince was very handsome, and I'm sure he had incredible bearing, and there must have been some significant radiance. The king had one of his minders follow him, come back and tell him where he was so that he could go and then have a chat. So the king did go and have a chat, and he said, instantly upon seeing him, he said, you have the marks of fine warrior noble, I would like you to share rulership of my kingdom with me. I give you half. Imagine, first meeting, the king's giving half his kingdom. The Bodhisattva said, I am not seeking these things bound up with death. I see danger in them. The king was more impressed. He said, well, in that case, have it all. They said, no, you don't understand. I mean it. I'm seeking the deathless. The king said, okay, well, when you find it, come back and teach me. That was actually very significant, because once the Buddhist order started to be an order, a large order, once the 5 Panchavaggi were arahants, Yasa was an arahant, Yasa's friends, then Lord Buddha headed to Gaya and taught the matted hair ascetics, the Kassapa brothers, the followers of the Kassapa brothers. One brother had 200, one brother had 300, another brother had 500 followers. Lord Buddha taught the fire sermon, and all of them became arahants. So now all of a sudden he has 1,000 more arahants. Then he headed to Rajgir, and the king offered him his bamboo grove. He said the bhikkhus will need a place to reside. The Buddha, in a way, is like one of his first headquarters, and many monks were living under rocky overhangs in fields, etc. But they would come to receive teachings and discuss things with Lord Buddha. Velavana was the first monastery. This sutta is simply a statement that the Buddha's intuition was correct. We're going to go through the Dhammacakka Sutta, where he describes his insight. But it's nice just to look at this sutta, because this is the sutta where Lord Buddha is confirming the intuition he had that there is an unconditioned was correct, and he did discover it. Ati bhikkhave ajatang abhutang akatang asankatang. There is an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, and unformed. No cetang bhikkhave abhavisa ajatang abhutang akatang asankatang. If there was not this unborn, this unoriginated, this uncreated, this unformed, nayidang jatasa bhutasa katasa sankatasa nisaranang panyayeta. Freedom from the world of the born, the unoriginated, the created, the formed, would not be possible. The originated, sorry. Yasama chakho bhikkhave ati ajatang abhutang akatang asankatang. But since there is an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, and unformed, tasama jatasa bhutasa katasa sankatasa nisaranang panyayati. Therefore is freedom possible from the world of the born, the originated, the created, and the formed. So, the world of the born, the originated, the created, and the formed, that's our conditioned reality. That's our world, our universe, our bodies, our thoughts, our feelings, all of that. What is the unoriginated, uncreated, and unformed? That's usually described as nibbana. So, there is something not bound by these conditions, not subject to these conditions. That was the Bodhisattva's intuition, that was the Bodhisattva's determination to discover and realize. And he did discover and realize it. Under the Bodhi tree, after practicing, you recall, he had practiced with the best samadhi teachers of his day. And he had realized, cultivated the arupa jhanas. So he was familiar with the infinite base of space, infinite base of consciousness, infinite base of nothingness, infinite base of neither perception or non-perception. Most people would get completely deluded by that. Such incredible, blissful, tranquil, boundless, radiant mind states. The Bodhisattva had enough mindfulness and enough wisdom from previous practice that he could see these things arise, stay for some time, degenerate, and cease. They themselves, this is the most subtle, most refined, most wholesome end of the conditioned reality. But it's still conditioned. And if a being has that ability, cultivates those levels of samadhi, and doesn't see that they're conditioned, when they die they're reborn as a Brahma realm, a Brahma Deva, experiencing those mind states sometimes for eons. And Ajahn Anan once said to me, the Brahma Devas are the most difficult to teach, because what they have is good. What they have is good. And it's very peaceful. He said what normally happens is that even if they come down from the Brahma realm and have another human birth, the mind has become so accustomed to samadhi, so inclined towards resting in the samadhi, that they will leave the household, go off to the mountains, eat leaves and berries, practice their samadhi, get their jhanas. When they die, they go straight back. And the Brahma Devas measure lifetimes in eons. Pretty amazing. But the area where Lord Buddha's insight into the middle way, that you need to combine a certain amount of concentration with directed, focused contemplation, investigation. Very difficult for a person with amazing samadhi to do, because the mind goes straight into the samadhi. It's missing this area where the important contemplation has to occur. The Bodhisattva sitting under the Bodhi tree entered samadhi after having practiced austerity for so long and not allowed himself to. He did enter the samadhi and came out of the samadhi, and in that state upajjhara samadhi is the state where conscious contemplation can occur. Directed contemplation. So that's something I wanted to mention as well. A lot of people really want jhanas and they get frustrated they don't seem to have the jhana, but it's important to understand upajjhara samadhi, almost jhana, is the space where the insight occurs. So we shouldn't be dismissive of or depressed about our upajjhara samadhi. It has a lot of potential. And it says that he reviewed 500, 5,000, 50,000 past lives. And it's difficult for us to imagine. But as we were exploring Buddhanussati last night, if one literally has spent millions of extra lives cultivating, then this laser-like, high-energy, precise, focused contemplation would be possible. And then he saw birth, aging, death, birth, aging, death, birth, aging, death. The other thing he saw was that it was always different, depending on the karmas that had been produced, sometimes in heaven, sometimes in hell, sometimes a human, sometimes an animal. No permanent unchanging in all of those 5 khandhas, no form that was stable and always the same, no feeling that was stable and always the same, no consciousness that was stable and always the same. It's like this big, constantly being recycled in the conditioned universe. Various components and appearing here, appearing there. And then he did the same thing for other beings, reviewed the current lives and past lives of other beings and saw the same thing. And in seeing the lack of permanence, and the insight is not self. The self is based on grasping at these things as being permanent, and there were other ways that the Buddha's insight is described. But the point is, he had the insight. He described it as jnana-dassana, direct knowledge. Direct knowledge into, he also said, that which had not been seen before, that which had not been known before. So that which had not been seen, that which had not been known, was the unconditioned. It's very interesting and wonderful. This is what gives us some hope and optimism in the conditioned reality, is that the factors of the Eightfold Path that Lord Buddha describes, one of the very important ones, they're all important, but one that is very important is the sati, samma sati, is that mindfulness is actually, according to what my teachers described, a sankhara, it's a condition. That's why we have to make an effort to make our mindfulness better. By putting forth an effort, by putting forth practice, our mindfulness gets better. We're creating better mindfulness. But it is the condition that will lead the mind to the point where it sees the unconditioned. Mindfulness has a quality of knowing things according to their characteristics when it's good mindfulness. So when that mindfulness sees arising, staying for sometimes ceasing, arising, staying for sometimes ceasing, it'll, in glimpsing the nature of the conditions, it then also sees the unconditioned, the deeper reality, when the mind lets go of the grasping. So that's why we do intensive meditation retreats. Have a closer look at the conditions. Notice they're ceasing, and sometimes we glimpse something else. Feeling of being a self can disappear for a period of time. The mind can be spacious and bright, not contracted, not grasping at the body and the thoughts and the feelings as being I or mine. But let's go have a little look now at the Dhammacakka Sutta, which we chanted last night. Once, when the Blessed One was staying in the deer sanctuary at Isipatana, near Benares, he spoke to the group of 5 bhikkhus. These 2 extremes, bhikkhus, should not be followed by one who has gone forth. Sensual indulgence, which is low, coarse, vulgar, ignoble, and unprofitable, and self-torture, which is painful, ignoble, and unprofitable. Bhikkhus, by avoiding these 2 extremes, the Tathagata has realized the middle way, which gives vision and understanding, which leads to calm, penetration, enlightenment, to Nibbana. And what bhikkhus is the middle way, realized by the Tathagata, which gives vision and understanding, which leads to calm, penetration, enlightenment, to Nibbana? It is just this noble Eightfold Path, namely, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Truly, bhikkhus, this middle way understood by the Tathagata produces vision, produces knowledge, leads to calm, penetration, enlightenment, nibbana. This, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of dukkha. Birth is dukkha, aging is dukkha, death is dukkha. Grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair are dukkha. Association with the disliked is dukkha. Separation from the liked is dukkha. Not to get what one wants is dukkha. In brief, clinging to the 5 khandhas is dukkha. This, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of the cause of dukkha, the craving which causes rebirth and is bound up with pleasure and lust, ever seeking fresh delight, now here, now there, namely craving for sensed pleasure, craving for existence, and craving for annihilation. This, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of the cessation of dukkha, the complete cessation, giving up, abandonment of that craving, complete release from that craving, and complete detachment from it. This, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. Only this noble eightfold path, namely, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. With the thought, this is the noble truth of dukkha, there arose in me, bhikkhus, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, and light, concerning things unknown before. So it is talking about the unconditioned, the unoriginated, the unborn. There arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, light. That's what he saw. He saw Nibbana, the unconditioned. With the thought, there is the noble truth of dukkha. This dukkha has to be understood. So that's an interesting word. Sometimes it's translated as known. You have to know dukkha for what it is. This is a very important instruction because most beings are very deeply committed to avoiding it, running away from it, minimizing it, denying it, blaming other people for it. And as a strategy, that doesn't work. So Lord Buddha is like a physician describing, we have an ailment. You are subject to dukkha. Is it true or not? Is aging unsatisfactory? Is association with the disliked unsatisfactory? Yes, yes. So we have to take that on the chin. Lord Buddha is describing a big chunk of our experience as beings in a conditioned reality. And rather than saying, don't look at it, deny it, distract yourself from it, Lord Buddha is saying, you need to know this. I need to have a good look at this. Know it for what it is. He does also say we should be generous, we should be careful, mindful. We should minimize our suffering. We don't create unnecessary suffering for ourselves and others. But with regards to the unavoidable suffering that we have a look at it. The next noble truth, the cause of the suffering. With the thought, this is a noble truth of the cause of dukkha, there arose in me vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, about things unknown before. This noble truth of the cause of dukkha has to be abandoned. There arose in me, bhikkhus, vision, knowledge, light, wisdom, etc. With the thought, the noble truth of the cause of dukkha and this cause of dukkha has been abandoned. Previously, Lord Buddha says, there is a noble truth of dukkha. This is true. It's a noble truth. It is to be known, and then he's telling you, he has known it. He knows it fully. He understands it. He knows what it is. He knows its cause. And this is the thing about having a good look at something, isn't it? Is you're going to get a glimpse of the cause of it as well. And for example, you have a mind state that you don't want, and you want it to go away, and you wish you could let go of it, but it doesn't. What is that? This is where we get to glimpse clinging. avidya, tanha, upadana. You've heard the teachings, you have confidence in the teachings, you want to be a good person, you come and meditate, irritation, aversion, ill will. You don't want to have those thoughts, they persist. What is that? Clinging. Why do we cling? Because we clung before. So we continue to cling. Wonderful, now I get to meditate, it's going to be really peaceful. Oh, sensual craving. I really want the ice cream, I want my latte. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is. I want this mindset to go away. It doesn't. Eventually it does. But it doesn't go away straight away when we want it to. And sometimes you never really know, do you? You had a really nice peaceful sit. You think you're going to get another one, come back. Really heavy sleepiness. Why? Because we've allowed ourselves to sleep a lot in the past. So we have this latent tendency because of our karmic habits and the way karma ripens in the mind. So we have to practice a lot of effort, make new habits, so we can liberate the mind. But Lord Buddha is saying he saw the craving, so it's avidya, tanha, upadana. Because of ignorance, we have the craving for. If we really see it for what it is, we don't crave for it. But because we don't see it for what it is, the ignorance, yet we do. Upadana, cling. Lord Buddha saw craving for kama tanha, bhava tanha, craving for becoming, vibhava tanha, craving not for, is the cause of birth and everything that comes with it. He saw that it needs to be abandoned. He abandoned it. How do we abandon craving? Basically, we have to keep ethical precepts, we have to be generous, and through the process of meditation, you see that it's painful. And in seeing that it is unsatisfactory, that it's painful, that it causes you suffering, you learn to let go of it. With the thought, this noble truth of cessation, there is the noble truth of the cessation of dukkha, there arose vision, knowledge, insight. With the thought, this noble truth of the cessation of dukkha has to be realized. With the thought, this is a noble truth of the cessation of dukkha, and this cessation of dukkha has been realized. So that's sometimes Theravada Buddhism is criticized or looked at in not much. People like to say all this stuff about suffering, you guys your Theravada Buddhism is boring. All this banging on about suffering. That's just paragraph 1, page 1, chapter 1. And it actually does have to be like that, because otherwise we will run away from it, ignore it, deny it, blame others for it. The Lord Buddha, trust his wisdom, it has to be there. Chapter 3, paragraph 3, cessation of suffering, complete cessation of suffering. What other religion can say that? Let's fly the banner of the Arahants. Only we can say that. So, and I realized it. Didn't just say it's possible. So I did it. And remember, while he was explaining this to the 5 disciples, Anya Kondanya had the first realization, the first stage of enlightenment. So other people can realize it too. How? By practicing the Eightfold Path. With the thought, there is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. There arose in me vision, knowledge, insight. With the thought, this noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of dukkha has to be developed. There arose vision, knowledge, and insight. With this thought, the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of dukkha has been developed. So the Bodhisattva finally, in the full moon of the month of Visakha, under the Bodhi tree, the Eightfold Path factors working together destroyed the kilesa, and the clinging and the ignorance was completely uprooted from his mind. And he not only glimpsed and experienced the unconditioned, but his mind was established in it in a way that it could never degenerate after so long. And then, fortunately, he taught others. Because when my knowledge and vision of the reality regarding these Four Noble Truths in their 3 phases and 12 aspects was fully clear to me, I declared to the world of spirits, demons, and gods, with its seekers and sages, celestial and human beings, the realization of incomparable perfect enlightenment. Knowledge and vision arose. Unshakable is my deliverance. This is the last birth. There will be no more renewal of being. Sadhu. And then as the sutta continues, the Devas proclaim. Also, well, firstly, Anya Kondanya has his insight. This is very interesting because Lord Buddha said you need this, you need this, you need this, you need all these factors. And Anya Kondanya has this simple insight. All that is of the nature it arises of the nature to cease, and he becomes a stream enterer. We can deduce from this that Anya Kondanya has already been practicing the Eightfold Path. He has good mindfulness, he has good virtue, he has right livelihood, etc., etc. Because the path factors are ripe. When he gets the correct teaching, he is able to finish off quite quickly. And some people also wonder about this. How come the 5 bhikkhus hear the teaching once and become arahants? And I've read the teachings 100 times and I'm not an arahant. How come the 1,000 matted hair ascetics all became arahants at the end of a teaching? I believe it's the case that many of these beings, not only did they want to realize the teaching, they wanted to realize the teaching listening to it from a Buddha. You know, we human beings, we sentient beings, we develop all sorts of preferences and aspirations. So suppose you've been studying the teachings of Buddhas for several lifetimes and you haven't met one yet, but you really develop an appreciation for Buddhas. It's like, these teachings are amazing, these disciples of Buddhas are amazing, and then the thought occurs, I really want to meet one. And that might be something that you can't let go of yet. That might be some of your craving that's, nope, not letting go of that one. And if you don't let go of that one, you won't become enlightened until you meet one. So, and that's okay. So I think Anya Kondanya had made the aspiration to be the first human being liberated by listening to a teaching of the Buddha. And so many of these beings had the spiritual faculties, the 5 spiritual powers, developed enough to be arahanta a long time ago. But they wanted to be enlightened by listening to a Buddha. They wanted to see a Buddha, they wanted to pay respects to a Buddha. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, it's quite fascinating, describing that all of the devas that had come from so many universes to witness the final passing of a teaching Buddha. It was said that there wasn't a space in the air for 20 miles around the size of a pinhead that didn't have a deva watching the Buddha enter final Nibbana, because such a rare sight it is to see. So, similarly to the devas coming from all universes to watch the Mahaparinibbana. A lot of beings want to see a Buddha. They say that Metta Buddha, Metta, will be so vast that he will be able to put out the fires of hell for a period of time. The only Buddha that we know of who will be able to do that. And then teach them. Some beings will be liberated from hell by Maitreya. So personally, I would like to witness that. Preferably not from hell. But it would be amazing, wouldn't it? Imagine these fire of hell, these miserable beings. Oh, fires are gone, fire's out now. And they're like, wow. You would listen, wouldn't you? Oh, what does he have to say? So if I still have that attachment, I won't be able to finish my work. But until then. The Devas, of course, saw that the Anyakondanya had been established in the first stage of enlightenment, and that the wheel of Dhamma had spread into the world. Why do you think it spread from the Bhuma Devas to the Brahma Devas in an instant? I think I have some ideas. Just like the matted hair ascetics wanted to be enlightened by a Buddha, I think that there were millions of Devas that wanted to hear that teaching from a Buddha. And so it wasn't just the 5 ascetics that were listening to that teaching. Imagine you're a Deva, you've practiced under previous Buddhas, you love Buddhas, you've noticed that the Buddha got enlightened in Bodh Gaya because this flash of light went through the whole universe. Really, yeah, he did it. What's he going to do now? He's going to go and teach. Oh, you were listening. So, one gifted monk who I know, who some of you know, told me that when Lord Buddha taught the Dhammacakka Sutta, Anyakondanya became a stream entra, and millions of Devas became Arahants. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's up to you. I believe it. And it's a very nice thing to believe. You think that there's only a few hundred Arahants left in the world, but yeah, but there's millions of Arahant Devas. Suddenly samsara is less depressing. It makes sense to me, it's logic. It's like, think of the Bodhisattva with his 4 incalculable plus 100,000 eons. What's he been doing? He's been teaching people, be generous, be ethical, meditate, practice samatha, brighten your mind, abandon the unwholesome. Where are those beings going to go? Most of them. They're going to go to heaven, right? Imagine you've been a student of one lovely bodhisattva who thinks of you and tries to train you, and life after life after life. If you listen to him even a little bit, you're going to be upstairs, right? And they'll have a karmic affinity, karmic connection, and they're listening. Okay. That might be another reason the light spread through the entire conditioned universe, because 100 million people became Arahants all at the same time. Wouldn't that be awesome? Anyway, this is a little bit of speculation. You don't need to believe it. But we do believe that Anyakondanya became a stream entra, and that the setting in motion the wheel of Dhamma occurred. The Lord Buddha had explained the teachings, the map. A person whose faculties were sharp enough had followed the instruction, contemplated correctly, and had a similar insight. That was when the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha became complete in the world, established in the world. And in the following days, they all became Arahants, those 5 bhikkhus, when Lord Buddha explained the Anattalakkhana Sutta, which we'll have a look at tomorrow. I hope something I said was helpful to you. I offer this for your reflection.
Let us take a brief pause to enjoy a beautiful song titled Twig and the Tree, a profoundly meaningful and spiritual uplifting hymn. This is a powerful presentation featuring Buddhist hymns with Dhamma points for reflections.
Gently teach the little children how to walk the Buddha's way. Show with kindness and affection what to do and what to say. Even as a tiny twig, if twisted, grows into a twisted tree. So do man and woman follow patterns learned from infancy. Let us then make sure that always exemplary we clearly show, so that our views life may never down the path of evil go. Teach the young the path to follow, show them in their days of youth, and when old and never waver from Lord Buddha's path of truth. Gently teach the little children how to walk the Buddha's way. Show with kindness and affection what to do and what to say. Even as a tiny twig, if twisted, grows into a twisted tree. So do man and woman follow patterns learned from infancy. Let us then make sure that always exemplary we clearly show, so that our views life may never down the path of evil go. Teach the young the path to follow, show them in their days of youth, and when old and never waver from Lord Buddha's path of truth, from Lord Buddha's path of truth.
Please join us for upcoming Enlighten talk with Venerable Bhikkhu Anand Anambodhi from Wales, United Kingdom. She began her monastic training at Amarwat Buddhist Monastery in England at age 24 under the guidance of Most Venerable Ajahn Sumedho. She later moved to the United States to help establish Alaka Vihara Monastery, a training monastery for women in California, where she now resides. We are honored to have her join us for a TV program to deliver a sermon titled Poems of the Buddhist Nuns. Let us welcome Aya Anambodhi to deliver her thought-provoking sermon.
I'm attracted to the project through that, hopefully. And also welcome to anybody who you know. I'm sure there are a lot of people who you've brought along from America as well. And yeah, so I'll be quite brief in introducing myself to anybody who doesn't know me. I'm Ven Chanda, disciple of Ajahn Brahm, and trying to establish a little project in England, a monastery for women. And I always take great inspiration from the nuns at Aloka Vihara in California, because I think your model is very close to what I'd like to achieve in the very long run. But for us, it's really seeds, because I'm alone here. I don't have other monastics to help me. So it's the beginnings. But we are part of a global Sangha, and I think that's something very beautiful, you know, to be reminded of that. And to, yeah, I was really fortunate to be able to stay at Aloka Vihara twice. One time during the Rains retreat that they were having, which is the winter time for them, and another time in the sort of spring, summer season, and get to know the wonderful bikinis over there. So before I introduce you, Aya, I wanted to just introduce you to our two co-hosts who've been helping with these Zoom sessions, and that's Anne-Marie at the top in the corner on my screen, and Mel P, you want to wave? And they're really professional now, especially at organizing the Q&A session. So they will automatically call out people's names who have their hand up and unmute them. So you won't have to do anything. You'll just have to answer or speak back to whoever raises their voice. Sometimes it's a question, sometimes it might be just a sharing. So I wanted to introduce Aya Anandabodhi just by reading the biography, the little bio that she sent in for us. So we can start recording now, Mel, if you haven't already. So Aya Anandabodhi became interested in Buddhism in her early teens, and she lived as a monastic at Amaravati and Chithurst monasteries for 17 years before moving to the USA in order to establish Aloka Vihara Forest Monastery, a place for women to train in the forest monastic tradition. In 2011, she took full bhikkhuni ordination, joining the growing number of women who are reclaiming this path given by the Buddha. Her practice is guided by the early Buddhist scriptures and through nature's pure and immediate Dhamma. Okay. And then she says that in this session, she'll be giving a guided meditation and offering teachings from the first free women, poems of the early Buddhist nuns. And this book is a contemporary translation of the Therigatha, verses of awakened nuns at the Buddha's time. And it's very close to her heart. So I think most people are probably here, and people may still keep coming in. We can probably keep the doors open, so to speak, for a good 10 minutes, I'd say. And I'll hand over to Aya Anandabodhi, who's going to start off by leading a guided meditation. Lovely.
Thank you, Aya Chanda. Lovely to see you. And thank you for inviting me onto this call. And lovely to see everyone, actually. And there's some people I've known since like 90s, like Shirley and Rosie, people I've known since the 90s. So it's very, very sweet to see you all. And people from America that I've known. One is now in Brazil. So we have two people from Brazil here. And from all over. It's very, very inspiring to see you all together, interested in the practice, and also, you know, I know many of you are supporting Aya Chanda, which, and in her, you know, quite amazing endeavours to start a place for a monastery for women in England for bhikkhunis. So, you know, I lived in England as a nun for many years, and there's that option, but for bhikkhuni, to take full ordination, there are very few opportunities for women. Many opportunities for men. Thousands and thousands of opportunities for men, and very few for women. So what Aya Chanda is doing is very courageous and full of faith and deep dedication in the Dharma. And so please support her as much as you can in her endeavours. Thank you. And so we're going to have a guided meditation, but I'd like to begin it with a poem, since we're reading from the poems here. And I'll just show you the book. Called The First Free Women, and it's a translation by Matti Weingast, who's a good friend. He's actually staying here at the monastery at the moment at Aloka Vihara, helping to build a meditation hut in the forest. So he's also proficient in Pali, and sort of a man of many talents, and he made this very unusual and very beautiful translation of the Therigatha, the inspired utterances of the enlightened nuns of the Buddha's time. And we worked together on it. He worked on it for about 3 years, and we worked together on it for the last 1.5 years. And so I had a sort of I felt, as soon as I read them, I felt this mandate, I must make these poems available to people, because they're very precious and transformative, and they speak to the calling that one feels in the heart. You know, when one first hears the teaching, and it resonates with something that maybe has never been touched before. You know, these poems touch that place. So I felt I must make sure that each poem comes to its full potential. So as I've been like chief editor, you could say, with this book, and that it's available as a book, you know, to the many folk. So here it is. I'm happy that it's arrived. So I want to start with this poem, and it's by Bhikkhuni Dantika. And this was actually the first poem that came through for Matti when he started translating this book. And it's just a reminder to have the right attitude to our practice and in relation to our mind. Dantika is translated as the elephant. While walking along the river after a long day meditating on Vulture Peak, I watched an elephant splashing its way out of the water and up the bank. "Hello, my friend," a man waiting there said, scratching the elephant behind its ear. "Did you have a good bath?" The elephant stretched out its leg. The man climbed up, and the two rode off together, like that. Seeing what had once been so wild, now a friend and companion to this good man, I took a seat under the nearest tree and reached out a gentle hand to my own mind. Truly, I thought, this is why I came to the woods. So keeping that image in mind, letting yourself rest into this meditation, reaching out a gentle hand to your own mind. And just establishing a posture for meditation. You'll sit for 30 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, something like that, 25. And just feel the weight of your body sitting here. Allow yourself to fully arrive right here. And as it was mentioned in the chat, some people are feeling relaxed and happy, and some people are feeling maybe anxious or agitated. So we just check in. What is the mood of the mind right now? Not with an agenda or any kind of pressure, but just to know, what is the mood of the mind right now? And to reach out that gentle hand to your own mind, as it is, kindly, friendly, towards whatever you find here. So being aware of the body and the breath, just letting the rhythm of your breath relax you, Bring your attention into focus. So we're not focusing hard and tightly on the breath, but just letting the breath be that which keeps us present. Just noticing if there's any constriction in your chest or in any part of your body. Let the breath gently open that up. So you might want to take a couple of deep breaths and then just let the breath go into its natural rhythm. So allowing yourself to settle, to open, to relax in a present way, finding that balance between presence and focus and relaxing and letting go. In a way, the breath itself invites that. The in-breath invites more energy and attention and clarity, and the out-breath invites that letting go. So if you find that you're very agitated, focus on the out-breath, letting go. You're still aware of the in-breath, but your main focus is on the letting go of the out-breath. And if you're feeling dull or sleepy, then pay special attention to the in-breath, the energizing, life-giving breath. And if you're feeling kind of balanced, you just stay with the in and out breathing. And whether you're feeling dull or agitated or peaceful enough, remember to have that relationship of friendliness towards your own mind. Before I start on the poems, I just want to take a moment to take you all in, since there's like 3 pages of you here, so just want to look and see who's here and feel the heart connection. Okay. So I'm going to read from some of these poems and just speak from them. I never quite know what's going to come through or what wants to be said. So I was trained in the Ajahn Chah lineage, and Ajahn Chah held quite strongly to the practice of speak from the heart. You know, study enough that you understand the teachings clearly, and then practice, and then speak from what you know. So I will do my best to do that and to honor his guidance. So this is the poem of Rohini, Wandering Star. And just before I read the poem, just to say that first poem I read, Dantika, that was the first one that was translated by Matti, and it's very, very close to the original. Just a very little change here and there to other translations. And then as he carried on with the work, I mean, and also originally he had no intention of translating the Therigatha. It was just, he was on retreat, and then he saw one translation and he thought, oh, I wonder if I could do better or different, you know. And Dantika was this first one that came through, the poem I read at the beginning. And then you know, and then there was another, and then there was another, and then at some point it was almost as though the poems had their own life and were just kind of coming through him, and they became more intuitive. So some of these poems have got quite a lot of poetic license, and if you compare them to the original, you might say, well, there's a lot of words that are different there, even whole phrases that are not in there. But if you look at each of the 73 poems, there are 73 in all, each one stays true to the essential message that is in the original Pali poem. So it's quite a brilliant piece of work, actually. So it's not just a rational literal translation, but it's a translation from the Pali with a deep understanding of practice and of somehow of like human nature. So this is the poem of Rohini, Bhikkhuni Rohini. You don't become the cloth just because you put on robes. You don't turn into empty space just because you carry a bowl. The sun doesn't bow down. Trees don't throw flowers at your feet. Birds don't start answering when you call. The path can hold even the biggest mistakes. The path will make room for even your deepest regrets. But you don't become the cloth of the robe overnight. It can begin very quietly, something you barely even notice, like the touch of water on your skin, like a knife in a drawer, like the next few minutes, unless they're your last. The path isn't a line on a map, it is a great shining world. Enter wherever you like. You might get thrown back once or twice, but if you push through the outer layers, oh, my sisters, then you will know the true welcome that is the very essence of the path. So I'm going to read that one more time. You don't become the cloth just because you put on robes. You don't turn into empty space just because you carry a bowl. The sun doesn't bow down. Trees don't throw flowers at your feet. Birds don't start answering when you call. The path will hold even the biggest mistakes. The path will make room for even your deepest regrets. But you don't become the cloth of the robe overnight. It can begin very quietly, something you barely even notice. Like the touch of water on your skin, like a knife in a drawer, like the next 5 minutes, unless they are your last. The path isn't a line on a map, it is a great shining world. Enter wherever you like. You might get thrown back once or twice, but if you push through those outer layers, oh, my sisters, then you will know the true welcome that is the very essence of the path. So, on this call, there are only 2 of us in the robes, but I think this is speaking to those dedicated to the practice. And you know, there's the initial awakening, in a way, when we first hear the Dharma, when the teaching touches our heart, when we recognize something that's true in a world that is continuously producing plastic replicas of truth. And then we hear it and we recognize it, and something awakens in us. That's like a kind of a going forth. And then you know, for a while we can be really very inspired and very high through the teachings, and it can start to feel like, oh, you know, I'm really special, you know, I understand these teachings, and it, you know, it can feel like that for a while, but it can be encouraging, actually, on the path, to have that initial inspiration and uplift. It's often what brings us in, that high, and maybe for a while our meditation practice is going really well, and you know, we might even start to think that trees are throwing flowers at our feet, you know, and birds are answering our call, and then it goes a little deeper, and then we have to start working through the obstacles, the hindrances that overwhelm our minds and hearts. And that can be quite difficult, you know, because sometimes we meet places where we start to meditate, or if we've been meditating for a long time, we meet those places that have been maybe pushed away, or haven't been addressed, or we've shut down around. And as we practice, we need to keep meeting those places, opening up around those places with, and I want to refer back to that previous poem, with a kindly, you know, reaching out a kindly hand to our own mind. So with a kindly attention, we need to meet many places within us that we didn't know were there, and there is places of strength and wisdom that we didn't know were there, strength and wisdom, and also places of shame and regret that maybe we've pushed away and covered up and kept busy so as not to have to look at. So this is, you know, the path can hold even the biggest mistakes. The path will make room for even our deepest regrets. This is very important, because if we don't allow all of it to come onto the path, then we stay sort of, you know, from here up. We might know a lot about the teachings and might be very, very articulate, very clever, and be able to have great conversations, but it's not transforming us. So we have to allow the path to transform us. And that can be messy at times. So I remember once my mother, when she was visiting Amravati Monastery, when I was living there, and we were standing under an oak tree, and she pointed out, I was talking about some challenges I was having, and she pointed out, for an acorn to turn into an oak tree, it has to actually die and start to fall apart. And then from that death and falling apart, the new shoot grows. And so to not be afraid of letting the process transform you. sometimes in ways that are a little bit scary for a while, because it's that's needed in order for the path to ripen and deepen and grow within you, and for you to ripen and deepen and grow within the path. So don't be afraid of that. And the path, it accepts all of you. It welcomes all of you. And not that you just, we just stay the same as when we started, obviously, but all of us have to be welcomed in order that we can do this work. The whole of us. All of us in our many different personalities and characters and shapes and sizes and ages and so on. And also the wholeness of each of us has to be brought in. However it is. However it is. And then you don't become the cloth of the robe overnight. It can begin very quietly, like something you hardly notice. So that's how it goes, there's the big, wonderful insights, which often at the beginning are really can often be quite remarkable and can feel huge shifts at the beginning. And sometimes later on in the path, we have some more big shifts. But the work can begin very subtly. And other people may notice things that we don't notice ourselves, changes that happen just quietly and subtly within us. So we might not even notice the changes that are happening. And it can be that, if we look at our practice and then we think, it's not getting anywhere, I'm not doing very well, and I still get really angry, or I still have a lot of greed. And it's good to know. It's good to know what we have to work with. But there may be work going on that you're not aware of that's deep and subtle. Just the wish to keep going on the path. The willingness to keep turning towards what needs to be transformed. The willingness just to sit each day in meditation, have some time of silence, introspection, stilling. And, we can make the path a goal-oriented practice, which is a linear way of thinking. And it's sort of counterproductive, really. And even though in common language in Buddhism we talk about goals, and attainments, and there are these English words we use, which are in some ways misleading, because an attainment isn't, when we have an attainment, we're not actually getting anything. We're letting go of something. We're letting go of something that's in the way of truth, that's in the way of reality, that's in the way of our freedom, our liberation. So, if you're here on this call, trust that your practice is working. You've shown up for this. This is good. And then just keep taking care of it. Keep nurturing your practice. So as I said, it's not a linear process. The path isn't a line on a map. It is a great shining world. Enter wherever you like. I love this image, and it's like it can be that that we start, our awareness starts to brighten, and then the very ordinary world that we live in, we start to see in a new way. So there's that Zen teaching, in the beginning, rivers are rivers and mountains are mountains. Then rivers are no longer rivers and mountains are no longer mountains. And at the end of the path, rivers are rivers again and mountains are mountains. So that's kind of pointing to when we begin, we just see things, oh yeah, it's a mountain, it's a river, yeah, I know what that is. It's a name, it's a thing, we've got the concept. And then we start to look more closely, and then we start to see, well, where does a river begin and end? Are the banks of a river part of it? Or, are the rocks, are the pebbles in the river part of it? And is there actually a river at all? The river is a process of constant change. The water is part of it, the banks are part of it, the stones are part of it, the fish are part of it, the person watching in some ways is part of it, because the person watching is calling it a river. So we start to see things differently. We start to take apart the normal experience that we have and see it in a new way. And then we can say, like, well, you can't pin down a river anywhere. There is no river. Similarly with the sense of self. If we do that practice of, where do I begin and end? Is it when the breath touches my lips or touches my nostrils and enters me? Is that my breath? Is that me? Or is it, as I breathe out, is it just that sort of cloud just out here where my breath has just come out? Is that still me? Or is it just the breath moving in and out? And so to explore we go through this time of exploring that the reality or that unreality of our experience. And it's beautiful and fascinating, and there's a shiningness to it, a brightness, because it's new and we haven't seen in that way before. And then at some point we go back to those conventions. A river is a river. You can get in a boat and you can move along the river, or you can cross it. It's still a river, but you know it for what it is. You know it in a deeper way. And it's the same with ourselves. We still function and operate. We still have to eat and sleep and defecate and urinate and eat and drink and relate and plan, all of those things. Not that we can plan very far these days. We have to do all of that. And that's the conventional, normal being somebody, and that's part of the reality. But we also understand that it's a process, that what I am is a process. It's a coming together of things for a while that will fall apart when it's the right time. So we can see it in that way. And then there's also, sometimes in meditation, we might experience the mind as bright and shining. And then the Dhamma is just present in its wholeness there, in that bright, shining mind. So these are all ways that we can think of, and you may have other ways that you can think of as the path being like a great, shining world. You might get thrown back once or twice. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. The 5 hindrances are constantly trying to throw us back. Doubt, self-doubt, doubt about the path, doubt about our ability to practice, doubt about the right meditation technique, that can happen, or being overwhelmed with fear or greed or dullness or anxiety. All these things can come and assail us at different times. So you might get thrown back once or twice, probably will. But if you push through the outer layer, so you just keep going, don't get pushed around by those hindrances. Oh, my sisters. So she's a bhikkhuni talking to other bhikkhunis, but this applies to all genders. But I'm going to keep with the poem. Oh, my sisters, then you will know the true welcome that is the very essence of the path. So it's the sense of arriving, or of completely letting go, whichever way you want to speak about it. So we begin where we begin, with our past, with our foibles, with our limitations, and we apply the practice to this as it is now. And again, in the beginning, we can have these wonderful ideals of how it's going to be and how we're going to be. And then we have to, that can carry us for a while. And then we have to let that go and keep coming back to how is it right now? How, what am I working with? Not what I like it to be. As long as we keep that wish, up there, how I want it to be. If we have it as a guiding star, it can be very good, that we look up to from time to time to remind us the direction we're going in. We need to have a sense of the possibility of a human life, which the Buddha showed so beautifully, and many of his disciples also realized and passed on. And that's where these poems come from, those awakened women who passed on the message of their awakening. So it's really important to know that this is possible. And we start from where we are, and we take a step at a time, and we work with pushing through the particular hindrances that arise for us right now, so that we can see truth. So that's the poem of Rohini, Wandering Star. And since we're here with Ayya Chanda, I of course have to read the poem of Bhikkhuni Chanda. So Chanda was, Bhikkhuni Chanda was born from she's born into a wealthy family, in a reasonably well-off family in a quite good situation, but similar to what we're experiencing now, there was a sickness that went through the village that she lived in, the town that she lived in, and many people died. So we're experiencing a pandemic on a world scale. She was with this, it seems like it was more localized to that town, to a smaller area. And she lost all of her family when she was a child. All of her family died. And so she was, in India at that time, you know, if for a female, you have to belong to a male. So if you don't have a father or a son or a brother or a husband, then you're just like on the streets. And so this is what happened to this little girl. So I'm going to read her poem. Chanda, the moon. Do you remember when disease came to your village? Of your family, you were the only one to survive. You were just a girl. For years you begged for food. Then a nun took you in. You told her your story, and she held you while you wept. Then she told you her story, and you wept with her. Her name was Patachara. You went everywhere she went, and soon left behind all that she had left behind. When you were young, you learned what it was to be truly alone. Now you know for yourself. Freedom is something altogether different from that. When you were young, you learned what it was to be truly alone. Now you know for yourself. This freedom is something altogether different from that. So this little girl finding a nun who had actually been through something quite similar. Patachara had also lost all her family, not in a pandemic or epidemic, but in a series of disasters that befell her family, and she was also overwhelmed with grief and really lost for some time, really lost and quite desperate. And then she happened across the Buddha, and the Buddha taught her the Dhamma, and she gained full awakening. And so when it says about Chanda, you went everywhere she went and soon left behind all that she left behind. So they both were able to leave behind the grief, the heartbreak of losing their family, and to come to that place of freedom. And I very often speak about, and so I almost can't help but speak about, one of the very important influences in my life as a nun, or as a human being really, was meeting Venerable Mahaghosananda. And he had a similar situation where he was from Cambodia. He was a Cambodian monk, very, very beautiful, radiant being. And while he was a monk in Thailand, while he was practicing in Thailand, in Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge was happening, and all of his family and basically all of his family were killed, and his country was destroyed. And he went through incredible grief, immense grief about this loss. And he wanted to go back to his country and help people, and his teacher said, no, don't go back. Stay, keep practicing, and then you'll have something really worth sharing with your people. And so he did that. And it would have been dangerous for him to go back also. But he did that, and he practiced, and he worked through that incredible grief, the biggest grief that one can have, I imagine. and came out the other side as this radiant, beautiful, present, playful being. So he was very much attuned to the suffering of the world, but he wasn't pulled down by it anymore. And for me, this was so powerful to meet him, just to see this is possible for a human being. You know, so I'm not there yet. I still get sad and cry over things that happen. Some of the things in America are very heartbreaking. And but I know, you know, I remember him and what he came to, not through an idea or a, you know, an ideal, but through deep realization. And so, you know, we still have work to do. But he didn't bypass the grieving. The grieving was part of the work. First, he went into that grieving, and then deeply reflecting on the nature of samsara, he came out the other end as this radiant, beautiful, compassionate being. So we all have this work to do. It's not easy, but it's we're invited to do this work. And the, you know, the world situation now, you know, the big one of the pandemic, and then all of the smaller ones of the harmful things people do to each other is kind of shocking, really. Some things that happen, and you know, those things still go on top of the tragedy of the pandemic. You know, this, and then there's also there's this. The pandemic is part of nature. Those things happen from time to time, and the human race is somewhat out of control as part of nature, and the pandemic is a natural process that happens in all species, and it's devastating and scary, you know. But it is part of nature. It's a natural thing. And then there's the kindness and the goodness and the courage and the nobility that brings out in people. And there's and there are those who take advantage and you know, do harmful things despite this incredible situation we're in. So, and this is samsara. It is like this. And I'm very much about the good, the true, and the beautiful, you know. And I'm lucky to have found a path that really holds that high, and as an inspiration and as potential. And yet, as long as we're here in this world, there will be beauty and ugliness. There will be nobility and profanity. You know, that's what the world is. So just knowing that, and yet not letting that be a reason to no longer cultivate the good. So the Buddha uses this beautiful phrase, not shirking our responsibility to cultivate wholesome states. I love that. Not shirking our responsibility to cultivate wholesome states. You know, we can use the difficulties in our life to be a reason not to cultivate the wholesome, and to fall down into, oh, it's all terrible and it's all awful and what's the point? But then the Buddha says, don't shirk your responsibility. As a practitioner, this is our responsibility, to be the holders of the good, to bring whatever light we have, whatever light, however tiny little flicker it might be, or however bright and radiant it may be, to bring our light into the world and to take care of that light and to nurture it and to let it grow stronger. This is our responsibility as practitioners. So since we mentioned Patachara, I want to also read her poem, and then I'll open up to questions and answers. Questions. So Patachara, Wandering Robe. And this is her story of enlightenment. So this is about her practice and then the moment of awakening. Farmers turn up the soil, plant seeds and wait. All by itself, water pours down from the sky and turns earth into food. After all these years, sleeping on the ground, waking before dawn and begging for every meal, where's my harvest? Late one evening, I was washing my feet after another long day of sitting and walking. The water poured over my feet and onto the ground. I let my mind go, and it flowed down a hill with the water towards my little hut. I went inside and sat on the bed and lowered the wick of the lamp. All by itself, the flame went out. So that image of the flame going out, that is an image of nibbana, of enlightenment. So in India in the old time, and also in China, there was this image of the fire being inherent and clinging to a fuel, and as long as it's clinging, then the fire is there. So I'm using. Interesting. I was just talking about nurturing your flame. There's all these different similes, isn't it? I talk about nurturing your flame, the flame of Dharma. This is a little bit different to this one. The flame went out. But maybe when you're enlightened, you don't need to nurture it anymore. Maybe that's another way of saying it. But then you'll be just a radiant being, so you don't need to worry about it. But this is a different use of the image of the flame. And so she's practicing and cultivating, really working hard, and then feeling like, gosh, where's my harvest? I'm doing all this work, it's just not getting me anywhere. And then one day she's just dropping into presence with what is happening here and now. Late one evening, I was washing my feet, just the most ordinary thing, and she would have been barefoot, so washing her feet at the end of the day before going to bed. After another long day of sitting and walking, trying and working hard, and the water, and then her attention goes to the water. The water poured over my feet and onto the ground. I let my mind go, and it flowed downhill with the water towards my little hut. I went inside, sat on the bed, and lowered the wick of the lamp. All by itself, the flame went out. It's very sweet. So and if you've ever had it, when we were children, we used to have gas lamps in our house. We lived in the country, and there was often power cuts. So we had these gas lamps as alternatives, and we had electricity too. But when the power cuts happened, we had these gas lamps, and you could turn a little knob at the side, and then the wick would come down, and then poof, the flame would go out. And so it's this image of, just as she's turning down the lamp, again, doing a very ordinary thing. She's not actually sitting in meditation. She's just turning down the wick of the lamp, and just as the flame goes out of the lamp, her mind also awakens, and the clinging to the sense of self is let go. She's liberated. So this very beautiful image. And then Patachara became the teacher of Chanda, and who also became liberated. So these people, these women, they were, they came from all sorts of different backgrounds, and some had terrible difficulties and tragedies, some had wonderful conditions which they left in order to become renunciants. And so in a way, this collection of poems, whether you read this book or other translations, it points to the, that you don't have to be a particular kind of person. You don't have to be beautiful or successful or well educated or anything, except you just need to be able to hear the Dhamma, and if it touches your heart, you practice, and then you keep practicing, and then you keep practicing, regardless of conditions, regardless of how easy it is or how difficult it is, or whether things are going well or not, or whether you have other people with you who practice, or other people are with you who find it irritating that you practice. You just keep practicing. And the practice is on the cushion, and it's also in your daily life, in our daily lives. It's all of it, the whole of your life. Make the whole of your life your practice. So I want to offer that today, and open up the screen, the rooms for any questions.
Even as a tiny twig, if twisted, grows into a twisted tree, so do man and woman follow patterns learned from infancy. Let us then make sure that always example right we clearly show, so that our views life may never down the path of evil go. Teach the young the path to follow, show them in their days of youth, and when older never waver from Lord Buddha's path of truth, from Lord Buddha's path of truth.
That wraps up today's program. If you have any questions or concern, please contact us at info@buddhadharmatv.com. We work so hard to share the noble, peaceful, and sublime teaching of the Buddhas with you, helping you pursue the spiritual path under his wisdom. Please encourage and support those who's interested in rational and enlightened teaching of Buddha. Thank you for watching. We believe our program on Buddha Dhamma TV will inspire peace lovers around the globe. Good night. Namo Buddhaya.